Hi, I'm VerBurg, and the title of our topic is Happiness in Marriage. A rather interesting topic, and I would like to say a very popular subject. We'll be talking about the whole aspect of happiness in marriage. I would like to preface our discussion by saying this, and that is, it seems that today, of all the things that man has set out to invert, that this is one of the areas that has really come under Satan's attack and man's attention. There's probably no area that has more ill-colored jokes about than marriage. It's the very cornerstone and foundation of a nation. Yet, for some reason, and I suppose this is Satan's method of destroying the home, the nation, and the church, marriage has been ridiculed, joked about, and criticized from just about every conceivable angle. I would like to lift some of those impressions immediately, even before we become involved in our topic. And I would simply like to say God did not institute marriage to be a plague to the human society. God instituted marriage for the sake of man to have happiness. We are going to work our way through this little booklet. The steps that I am going to be showing to you are very, very simple. I would like to caution you, though, that you do not take any of these for granted. I would like to say that you ought to take each of these very seriously in their place, and don't try to leave any of the steps out, and don't try to move any of them around. Each of these is equally important for the simple reason all of these were gained through countless hours of counseling, dealing with marriage cases and marriage problems so-called. As a result of that, this tiny little booklet with these few simple steps has been placed before you, and I count it a real privilege to be able to be with you so that I can present this material to you personally. I'd like to ask that you stay with me as we go through the booklet. Do not run ahead. Do not lag behind. You may go through the material again and again. It will be very profitable if we stay together. Let's turn to page 1. I begin with, we live in a universe controlled by many life-giving principles. It's in an area like marriage that I believe we cannot emphasize it often enough, that there are principles which govern a marriage. Our society in the last decade has made every effort it could to change, modify, and uproot anything that's ever been done. I well recall a debate I was at in one of the universities of the Midwest, at which time I was asked to debate with another pastor concerning the institution of marriage. In doing so, I soon gained the impression from him that he felt that the mode of Scripture was completely outdated as far as one man, one lady, one husband, one wife. It struck me very deeply at the time how that the thinking of the world had infiltrated the thinking of the church, even pastors and clergy. This goes back close to 10 years ago, and since that time I have seen much eroded away in the real world of marriage that then was merely concept and thought. The impression I got from that pastor that night was that any time you put life under principle, you've ruined it. Any time there's form and order, you've stagnated and stifled it. I like to emphasize that our universe is controlled by many life-giving principles, and that every principle God has put in our universe is for the intent of giving life, not death. Can I just give you a simple illustration? Our Earth, simply tilting on its axis, changes temperatures and seasons in relationship to the sun. If God changed the relationship of the earth and sun, like man has inverted the principles of life, the world would be extinct. Let me use another illustration. Let's just say that you live in a particular town, and let's say that your house is located on an east-west street and your house is on the south side of the street. Let's also say that your house is to the east side of the downtown district. Let's just say that the church is to the south of the city. Suppose some Sunday when you get out of church, instead of the church being south of downtown, you suddenly decide that without too much being changed, it's to the north of downtown. And for you to find your way home, you have to go home the opposite way. And then instead of your house being located east of the downtown district, it's to the west of the downtown district, which means you have to travel another direction. And when you get there, it's no longer on the south side of the street, but it's on the north side of the street. Then let's just say that God took all the trees and bushes out of your yard and put them around the house next door, and took the neighbor's bushes and trees and put them around your house. And let's say on the same day that when the sun came up from the east, by noon when it was overhead, it quickly went off to the south and set. And it wasn't long a sun came out of the north, rushed up overhead, and went back to the east, and sunset was the same direction as sunrise. As you pursue this, you can see that God is very regular, very orderly. He changes next to nothing. We orient our mind and our total thought patterns and world off the regularity in which God conducts and handles creation. The point I'm trying to make is if God altered the things of nature and the things of this earth and the universe as fast and as drastically as what man has altered the principles that govern marriage and that govern his own particular life, there wouldn't be a person left on this earth with an ounce of sanity. It is only sin that can distort a mind so far as to say that we need change in order for life to be interesting, and that change can improve what God has so in His wisdom ordained and established and given to us to enjoy. I'm saying this, that in marriage, the way God originally intended it, one husband, one wife, and that they should dwell together in mutual love and harmony and work toward that harmony, was God's intent to produce happiness. Now, these principles that God has given covered all of life. They are intended to bring happiness into every part of our life. There are things that we can eat physically that will kill us, and there are things that we can eat that will give us life. Spiritually, there are things that we can do that will destroy us spiritually, and there are things we can do that will make us rich. Emotionally is the same way. We can follow the fine principles that God has given for marriage and find that it brings peace and contentment to us. And we can take the very same things and we can change them all around and find that we become the most discontented, lost people ever known to civilization. Page 2, I simply make a statement which I've often repeated before. In all the principles of life, simplicity is the key to success. God's ways are simple ways. It seems that man always has to try to do something just a little bit better and make it just a little more profound and complicate it just a wee bit more, and when he is finished, he finds out that he has ruined almost everything. As we turn the page, we find that the purpose of this booklet is enable you to experience abundant living in one area of your life, namely marriage. We'll turn the page, and as what we are going to do is we're going to establish and build up a pyramid. The steps are going to be very simple, but let me certainly caution you on this, and that is don't underestimate any one of these steps and don't change them around. Now, before I show you how to construct this pyramid, I would like to first of all show you what the peak of the pyramid is, or what all of it is aimed at. Happiness. Happiness in marriage is what everyone is looking for. I am yet to find somebody who went out to seek a partner, to find somebody who could perform the ceremony because he wanted to enter a life of misery. Everybody I have ever counseled with yet who was sitting on the verge of divorce said to me with tears in their eyes, originally we loved each other, deep down we still do, and the one thing we really wanted out of marriage was happiness. That's really what we were looking for. What is happiness in marriage? Well, happiness is when you are satisfied and perfectly content with your marriage partner. That's right. If you look it up in the dictionary, you will find a very simple definition to happiness that reads this way: to be satisfied or content with what you have. Simply converting that into terms of marriage, it just simply means this, that happiness in marriage is that you are satisfied, you are perfectly content with the partner that you have. And if you are sitting together right now, you should be able to look at that person and say, there are many wonderful people in the world, and perhaps there are many that I could have had a happy marriage with. However, I am so satisfied, so content with you. No one could bring more happiness into my life than what you are. How are we going to gain it? We'll turn the page and drop in the first step in the pyramid, namely communication. What is communication? It's surprising what definitions people give to it, especially in the context of marriage. I quite often get definitions something like this: it's when you talk something over, or when somebody says it's to settle differences, or it's to get the quarrels ironed out. It's a sad commentary on marriage that many people never talk within the marriage context unless there's a big heavy deal to be settled, unless there's a problem to be ironed out, or unless somebody wants their way and they're in conflict with somebody else, and beyond that point they watch television, read the evening newspaper, or just plain go places. I would like for you to turn with me and take a careful look at the word communication. What is it? On top of page 8, I give you a very simple definition, and once again I took it out of the unabridged edition of the Webster Dictionary. When I looked it up, it said that communication is to share. Now, isn't that interesting? Sharing isn't settling anything. Sharing is just simply kind of saying it the way you see it. Let me explain it. I have it explained right on the page. Communication is when you share thoughts and feelings from your private world. Did you get that? Not many people understand their own private world today, and still fewer share it with their partner or even try to communicate it. I'll begin again, because this is very important. Communication is when you share thoughts and feelings. A genuine person, a mature adult, is one who will exercise his thinking and his feelings in a nice, balanced way, but when he speaks and is involved with you, he will be sharing both thoughts and feelings. From your private world, in such a way that you allow your partner to know how you see what you see and feel what you feel. In doing so properly, your partner will do the same, thus enabling you both the opportunity to enjoy each other more. Did you get that? The purpose of this sharing is so that you can take a particular situation, a situation that is rather crucial or important to both of you. It probably is very important as far as the relationship, to keep you close together within your relationship. And you share this experience with your partner, not for the sake of convincing and changing your partner, but you do it for the sake of allowing your partner to see what you see and feel what you feel. You know what an argument is? An argument is when somebody's trying to change somebody, and it won't work. So at that point, you should have enough sense to pull the plug. Sharing is not arguing. It's not convincing. It's not trying to change somebody. It's merely disclosing how things look and how things feel from your world. Now, you see, you can take the most delicate issue in the world and you can talk it over in your marriage and never have anybody raise a voice, never grow distant from each other, just grow closer together. Because all I'm simply doing is innocently telling my partner how I see it and how I feel about it and so forth. And you see, the nicest thing is that when I finish doing that, my partner is encouraged to do the same thing with me and see it like my partner is interested in how I see things. I'm interested in how my partner sees them. I have an example of this in the next page, so if you turn the page, I'd like to explain the illustration to you. I have a problem area, which is that sort of a little box thing with the irregular ends. I have the husband on one side, the wife on the other side, and each of us looks at the same identical thing differently. Now, how can we resolve this difference? Well, if the husband or wife, doesn't make any difference who starts, but if, say for instance, the husband will start and say to him, this is going to be difficult. The way I see it, and he describes how he sees it, and you notice that his end of the rectangle there has some jagged edges to it. She listens to it, the wife, tries to understand, tries to see what he sees, and then when he's kind of described his side, and he isn't doing it for the sake of convincing her and changing her and having her see it that way, then she describes how she sees it. You know, it's such a simple process. It's such a beautiful process. Let's say I'm sitting at a little desk, and let's just say that from my side of it, it's gray, and let's just say that from your side of where you're looking at it, it's green. And I say to you, isn't that something, this little desk that they sprayed it with gray paint, and you say, gray paint. You say it's green. I say it's gray. You say it's green. Now, if it's like a marriage, you say, you're colorblind. I say, I'm not either. You have to be. And so you say, well, you just don't know your colors. And I say, well, look who's talking. It's gray. It's green. It's green. It's gray. Now, you see, we can very, very simply solve that by saying, let me get up and look at it on your side, and you get up and you look at it on my side. And if that's too much work, I'll just turn the desk around so you can see my side. And lo and behold, I better look at your side. And we find out, strangely enough, they painted one side of the thing gray and the other side green. What's the good of all this? Well, turn the page. It's so we can understand each other. Understanding is when you allow yourself to think and feel situations the way your partner does. Did you get that? It's allowing yourself to think and feel the situations the way your partner does. You know, there's a threat in that. It takes a very mature person with a lot of boldness to allow himself to think and feel the way another person does for the sake of finding out how he or she does it. Or I can say it this way, understanding is to stand where your partner stands. Swapping places. Turn the page and I'll show you the illustration again. There's the problem area. There's the husband, the wife, the same type of a rectangular formation in between us. Now, through talking and listening, each will be able to see and feel what the other sees and feels. And if you watch the arrows there, you notice that they both change places and see it from the opposite point of view. Who changed? It's interesting. Both. Is the difference any less between them? Yes, there is no difference between them, because you see, I broaden my perspective. Now I can see it my way and I can see it your way. You know how communication usually works. People could do this, but normally is what people are doing is they hear somebody saying a little something, and then they think they have enough to start figuring out a rebuttal, and they tune the person out, let them talk, figure out a rebuttal, and come back from their corner with a rebuttal on what they said. And what they didn't realize is the last sentence or two that the person said made all the difference in the world, which meant they really weren't that far apart, but the other person was so busy figuring out an argument to come back with that they missed that last sentence, and they just kept the whole thing going around, and they went all night. And the irony of it was, if they had a referee, he would have said, "You're both saying the same thing. Can you stop long enough to see it?" We aren't that different. We just think we are. But there aren't that great of differences between us. I have people, when I show this to them, they say, but now that I see it her way and she sees it my way, does that mean now then that she's going to do it my way? And I say, I don't know. And they say, well, but then what good is this? And I say, well, now you see it both ways. It brought you close together. Is it important that somebody change? Well, if we're both going to do it alike. Have you ever stopped to think that most things that you think are so important that have to be changed, it doesn't make any difference either in time or eternity if somebody changes or not? I would venture to say 90% of the stuff that people hassle and haggle about, it doesn't make one bit of difference for the rising and the setting of the sun, the continuation of the home or not, if they even iron it out, because it probably wasn't even worth bringing up to begin with. The way a lot of things get brought up is somebody's short on sleep, or somebody has a headache, or somebody just wanted something to talk about, didn't know what to talk about, and many things get out in the open that way and get kicked around until all of a sudden there's a problem. Why not just work toward learning how to share, then learning how to see things like your partner does? Why do we see things differently? Well, for the simple reason we both grew up in a different home, which was, in a sense, a different kind of world. That's why. It's about that simple. Did you ever stop to think that when you went out to find a partner for marriage, you went out looking for something that was an opposite from you? You know why? It's because you had long concluded that one of you was enough. And then, after you're married about 5 years and you find out what that all means and how different you are, then you blame the results of the marriage on you're both so different you have nothing in common. Well, I think that you went out and looked for somebody that was an opposite, so what? I have always said one of my kind is enough in this world. That's why I keep making room for other kinds. And I just keep hoping, of course, that other kinds keep making room for me, and somehow or another we're going to make this thing a good place to live. Well, turn the page. What's all this good for, this communication and understanding? Well, it's so that we can reach the point of being able to accept each other. Now, let me emphasize before we go any further, the rest of this pyramid has to come automatically. And if at any time some part of it does not come automatically, don't work at it. Go back to the communication and understanding. You know what it takes to build and maintain a good marriage? It means that a husband and wife will sit down at least 1 hour every evening when the children are in bed and the house is quiet and the phone no longer rings, and will sit and share with each other with no newspaper, no television. A nice place to do it is around a kitchen table if that's comfortable. What's the good of this communication and understanding? Well, the beauty of it is acceptance. And that's when you are able to think and feel the way your partner does, without it bothering you or it hindering your happiness. Acceptance is not built and cannot be built on the premise of you will change or when you change. Acceptance merely has to be built on the premise immediately, I take you as you are. Different though you be, I take you as you are. And it doesn't bother me to let you be you. If you don't do it that way, acceptance is no acceptance. Change can't happen. Things can't happen. Marriages cannot grow under rejection. They can only grow under acceptance. And it's extremely important that acceptance be the forerunner of anything that's ever going to be in your marriage. And listen, you do not accept your partner because then he will change or she will change. That's not acceptance. That's something like craftiness. That is manipulation. That's dishonesty. To accept is to assume the partner will very likely never change. But so what? You see, the next step in the pyramid is trust. When you reach the point that you can share back and forth, dare to listen, dare to understand and sit where the partner sits, then you can accept them as they are, and when you have built acceptance, you will also be able to establish trust. Trust is when you allow your partner to give what he or she has to contribute toward the happiness of the marriage, without you censoring, controlling, or altering it. There's thrust in trust, and trust is for the purpose of thrust. Trust is when I plunge forward into my marriage with what I have to contribute, and it's when my partner thrusts forward with what she has to contribute in our marriage. And the result of this combination is we enrich each other's life and we enrich a relationship that we call our marriage. Trust. No censoring, no doubting, no controlling, no altering. It's simply taking the person's contribution just the way it is, rejoicing in it, accepting it just the way it is, and letting it add to the mutual happiness of the marriage. Well, what's the good of that? When you get to the point where you can trust each other by thrusting each other into the marriage, there's another projection step that gets laid in the pyramid next, and that's the one of love. Love is when you reach out to give yourself to your partner without reservation in order to make your partner happier. In other words, divine love is I give you what you need, even if it hurts me. Human, earthly, sinful love is I get what I want even if it hurts you. Divine love is I give you what you want or need, even if it hurts me. Tremendous difference there. Love is a reaching out process. You cannot reach out unless you have things put together in your own personal life in such a way that you can take all of yourself and reach out to your partner, take your partner in, give him or her whatever spot and place they want in your life. Time and talent and gifts and abilities, anything you have that you can give to your partner, and anything that the partner needs that would enrich their life, it means you're willing to give it. I often look at the relationship of Jesus in the church. Jesus gave himself to the church to enrich it, to make us happy. And if we respond to that in a proper way, it means our response is built on the want to make Jesus' life rewarding for what he has given. And in the Scriptures, as you well know, in the book of Ephesians, the 5th chapter, there's that identification between Christ and the church, the husband and the wife. Now, when you turn those around and when you play those through each other, you immediately see that the husband is to be Christ-like, and the wife is to be church-like. The husband is the benevolent giver to give to his wife all she has in need of to enrich her life, and she takes it to enrich her life and then to give back a portion out of gratitude. And out of what he gives her, she uses it for self-beautification so he can enjoy her more. How beautiful. But how far marriage has fallen today, with husbands reneging on their responsibilities, and with wives not responding to the giving of the husband. I guess the breakdown in the home, to repair it and get it back to where it should be, would have to begin in the marriage relationship. It would have to begin with the husband, and it would have to be followed through by the wife. After all, a wife has nothing to respond to if the husband is not the benevolent giver. Like if Jesus gave nothing to the church would have nothing to respond to. But because Jesus gives, the church has everything to respond to. So accordingly, husbands, never stop reminding yourself, if you are to have the place of authority in relationship to your wife like Christ has to the church, you also have the duty and are duty-bound of God to carry the responsibility. You cannot have authority without responsibility. They go together. And love is for you to fill your role, each in your place, as God has ordained it. And you cannot stand on a side-by-side basis or an inverted basis. That makes marriage a monster. And our society has indeed done that today. And sorry to say, the behavior of the world is found in the body of Jesus, the church. Or to put it very simply, Christians are acting like unbelievers. The next step in the pyramid is, once we have gained the trust, the performance of love, there's touch. Touch is when you confirm and share your feelings through a physical gesture to enable your partner to feel your sincerity. Husbands should realize that the embrace, to hold, to squeeze their mate, is a very important part in the marriage relationship. We were made to cling to each other, to be together. And you know as well as I do that there is a lot communicated through touch. We can run our feelings through our handshake, and we can run our iciness through the same hand. You hold the hand of one person, you can feel the warmth, and then you hold the hand of another person at another time, and you can feel the chill in the distance. Touch is a very, very strong communicator. Now, quite often in marriage, I have wives come in and complain how that sexually their life is so deficient, unsatisfactory, unrewarding. It often happens that the same woman has feelings of she can't be touched. And many times in the counseling session when I run into these types of situations and I can tell that the woman is one of don't touch and life is very unsatisfying and the sexual relationship is in a very, very sad state, I will say to the woman, if I were your husband right now and put my arms around you to squeeze you or to hold you, what would you do? And she says, I'd push you away. And I say, why? She says, because I guess I'm not used to being held, and I guess I never was, and I guess I don't like to be held. Turn the page. You see, that leads to the part of sexual intercourse, which is the sexual relationship in the marriage. How can the sexual intercourse part of the marriage be rewarding and fulfilling if the couples are not able to touch or have physical contact with each other? You see, these are characteristics of personalities. It's not a matter of I can be touched and can't be touched. I can be hugged and I can't be hugged. I can find rewards in the sexual relationship in marriage and I can't. There are no such things as sex problems in marriages. They're personality problems. This is true all the way through life. This is why sex manuals do so little good in helping people in the long run of the thing. Because if you want life to work, it's built on a premise of simplicity, and it stems out of a personality. And if things are in order in the personality, there is no problem anywhere in life. But if the personality is inhibited in some way, shape, or form, something is going to show up somewhere in life. And the sexual relationship in marriage is one, for the simple reason, in it a person needs to give himself totally. Now, in the American scene of life, the sexual intercourse part of marriage is often looked upon as a purely physical act, and if you can learn the physical gimmicks, you can have physical reward. It's not true. I'd like to submit to you that the sexual relationship in marriage is 85% in the personality, and it's only 15% physical. You see how this whole pyramid shapes up? It begins in communication, doesn't it? To be able to share openly and freely with each other in a non-offensive and protective way for the sake of being able to understand each other. Switch places. Be where the other person is. Now there's the bottom of the whole pyramid. And the better you perfect that and maintain that on a daily basis, acceptance is a very simple thing. I can leave my partner just the way he or she is. I don't have to change them. I accept them. And then I don't have to censor and alter their life. I can trust them. Now when I can trust them, I'm already beginning to reach out. And how much more emphatic the reaching out becomes when love comes into the scene. And I can begin to minister to my partner. Love is a ministry. It's not what you get. It's the joy of giving. The old King James Bible had a few words in it that became kind of outdated in style to our own particular everyday language. And one of those is found in that great chapter on love in the book of Corinthians, where it says, charity. Instead of using the word love, The King James used the word charity. And I would like very much to see us get that word charity back, because the word love is empty. It doesn't mean anything today, but the word charity still means everything. A charitable organization is one that gives and gets nothing back and doesn't expect to. Love in the Christian sense, within the marriage and the Christian family, is the privilege of giving and not expecting to get back. So within the marriage relationship, the pyramid, if I from my side and my partner from her side looks upon love as a ministry, the marriage is going to be one of abundant love, extremely rich, exceedingly abundant. And as the love flows, the two people flow together, and there's where the touch comes in. And finally, in the sexual relationship, it's just the capstone where each gives of himself and herself to the other. For what purpose? To satisfy the desire of the other person. And when each is doing that, it is fulfilling to the individual. I'm going to say something about sexual intercourse within marriage which is going to help you. It's a very small area that most couples do not understand. As a result of it, they often take the dissatisfaction that arises out of the sexual relationship and feels it's because the other person doesn't love me. I'm also going to touch on something we already commented on, and that is that God made the man the head of the home, made the wife the mate who receives and who also in turn enriches the marriage. This order is important when it comes to the part of sexual intercourse. God intended and made man the aggressor and the woman the one who desires to be sought out. That's one point. I'd like to make another point. Number two is a man should remember that his life is heavily characterized with rationale, or in other words, he thinks his way through life. And that's why in the sexual relationship a man is very quickly aroused, can very quickly satisfy himself, and very quickly drop it all. He should remember that a wife or a woman operates basically or very heavily on a line of emotion, and it takes emotions longer to all go one direction than what it does a mind that merely rationalizes. Put it very simply, men feel by thinking and women think by feeling. In the sexual relationship within the marriage, man should realize that he needs to prepare or ready his mate, and this is where petting comes in. It does not belong in dating. It belongs in the marriage relationship where sexual intercourse is intended. In this connection, a man should realize that it takes his wife time to prepare emotionally, time to climax during sexual intercourse, and time to anticlimax, and it's the duty of the husband to see that she is able to accomplish these goals. Another point I'd like to mention is that part of a man's sexual apparatus is his hand, and the use of the hand belongs in marriage. It's a beautiful relationship. All of this is intended for the mutual happiness of both of them within the marriage. I remember when I finished a live conference in this some years ago, that a lady well stricken in age, perhaps no longer on earth today, came up to me and in her own brogue and broken form of English said to me, "I wish my husband and I could have heard this 40 years ago." She said he is no longer alive. She said all through marriage, and I believe she said that they were married something like 50 years before he departed. She said, we never once enjoyed it. She said, my husband was taught that it was for the pigs, and I was taught that it was sin. But she said, through all those years, I always thought that wasn't right. And she said, now tonight, after life is over, she said, I heard you explain it in such a beautiful way. I can see that God really intended it that way. Look at that pyramid and think of the average American marriage. They start off with happiness. It's a rip-snorting time. Lots of sex, touch and petting, and a puppy love. In other words, they start the pyramid from the top and kind of work the thing down. But when it comes to trust, acceptance, understanding, communication, those four never get into the marriage. And as a result, the marriage cannot last. A person said to me the other day, I stared and stared at that pyramid and looked at the word love, and it said to me that stands in the middle between understanding each other and happiness. Love stands in the middle, but you have to build it bottom up. And in our marriage, and the marriage was broken, we never once had the bottom four parts of the pyramid. That's why I say to you, you have to build it bottom up. Well, on page 25, and I conclude now, in the last few pages with a few things for you to think about, I'd like to ask you a very important question right now. Would you like to experience this happiness now in your present marriage? Assuming your marriage is not a happy one, would you like it to be? I was told the other day in 1976 there were over 1 million divorces in America. If each of these had an average of 2 children in it, 4 million people were affected with a divorce situation. I wonder how many have been affected in the last 10 years. We often talk about the statistics of divorce, but I wonder if we shouldn't start talking about the miserably married or the unhappily married people to get at the root before divorce climaxes. Well, if you would like to have this happiness in your present marriage, I would like to have you remember this. When any part of this pyramid is not bringing you mutual happiness, you must rework the part of communication and understanding until each part becomes a reality. You can't make love work by working on love. You have to work it from understanding. May I also remind you on the next page that marriage problems are personality problems. Our marriages are only the chimney through which we vent our frustrations. The marriage is only your excuse. Don't stop here, for your present marriage can be the best ever. Don't give it up. Divorce is nothing more than trading off one set of problems for a worse set, and put you down a road just a little ways where there's no way back. It's not your partner that's the problem. If there's unhappiness in your marriage, it's because you cannot handle it. May I also advise and urge you that if after following this booklet you are still experiencing difficulty in your marriage, that you would seek out the assistance of a good, well-trained counselor, one that a friend could recommend to you. The day has come when divorce must stop. I know we can't stop it in the world, but I believe the time has come that we stop it within the family of God. No longer should we hear the sounds of divorce and separation. I have gone through my vocabulary in childhood so many times in the last years, and I have tried to figure out, in those years, did I know what divorce was? I had never even heard of the word. Never. But I had never heard of a lot of other words either, like babysitters, television, and things like this that has rent our homes and society. It's a sobering thought, and I trust that I've given you not only things to think about, but a method for building. And may I remind you that God will reward anybody who hangs in there and sees their marriage through. And maybe right now, as you've gone through this little booklet, you're on your second or third marriage, may I say. It's probably because then you were a victim to our society, in that you didn't have help. But start where you are. And in spite of your own life having gone through one or two marriages, let's teach the next generation how not to have divorces. We have to start someplace, and I would certainly hope that we would start now within the Church of Jesus Christ. Let's pray. Dear God, enable us through the power of the Holy Spirit to be happy in our present marriage. Give us the patience and kindness to practice what we have just learned. We thank you for bringing us together. Amen. I'd like to ask you a couple questions in closing. Did you pray the prayer? And were you sincere? If so, may I suggest you take your Bible and study Ephesians 5, the whole chapter, and think of the entire chapter in the context of your marriage. Now, when it says, talking with each other much about the Lord, quoting psalms and hymns, and singing sacred songs, making music in your heart, and always giving thanks for everything, though that's advisable around the church and good for the community, it's still best when it's heard within your marriage.